Okay, well, let's do this. We'll start on this topic here, and we'll just kind of see where it goes. Some of this is just some actual lessons that I've put together while in school, so usually I'll just take it with me, throw it in there just in case. So this is a just in case. So anyway, so what we'll talk about tonight is, let's get on the topic of some alcohol-related topics, some things that are related with it. Of course, we know alcohol is a major problem. We know that it is destructive. We know that it can ruin lives. Me, as most know here, has already experienced some of that. So this lesson that I put together on this is entitled The Red-Eyed Mocker, is what it's entitled. The Red-Eyed Mocker. And it's going to, the very first one that I start off with is in Proverbs 20, or Proverb 20 and 1. Now, in one research that was done in February of 2013, out of the many that have been done throughout the years, this one was held in the Boston area at the Boston University of School of Medicine, which links alcohol as being responsible for 20,000 preventable cancer deaths a year. And this would include mouth cancer, throat cancer, esophagus cancer, and liver cancer. And I'm sure many other different cancers and health issues that are involved with alcohol. And of course, we also know, and as we'll see as we go through this study, that it's not only just physical problems that alcohol can cause, but many other problems which alcohol can be a problem with. Alcohol also increases the risk of getting colon cancer, rectum cancer. So the list goes on and on and on of just alone the medical problems that alcohol can cause. Now, most think of or contribute alcohol and the problems that come with it as related to mainly men. Most of the time when you think of alcohol, you picture men. Think of the commercials that you'll see on alcohol. Anything alcohol related usually is trying to draw in men. And so most of the time when you think of alcohol as being a problem, most consider alcohol being men related. But it also involves women. Breast cancer was the most common cause of alcohol. In other words, that in the cases where there was breast cancer found, alcohol contributed to this kind of cancer and the death of women. Matter of fact, it says it's a counting of approximately 6,000 deaths yearly related to alcohol and women, directly towards breast cancer. That is, or about 15% of all breast cancer deaths is related to alcohol. Now again, this is due to this research that was done by Boston. And I just am quoting what they have come up with. Of course, this doesn't even include all the problems, as we were talking about, that are outside the health problems. Now, one thing I was thinking about when I was putting this together, and if I put it in somewhere down the road here, then I'll skip over it because I don't remember if I did or not. But one thing that I remember was, and of course time starts slipping by me real fast, but it seems as if it was in the last 5 years or so that they were actually recommending women, and I'm assuming that men were included in this, is that if they would drink a glass of wine a night or with their meal, let's just say the day, that it would actually help with cancer. In other words, it would keep it from forming, keep things cleared out. But it's funny because now, 5 years later, and I'm just guesstimating here, now they have said that is not good. And now they have even backed off of that, saying that now that the research that they have found, saying that if you drink 1 glass of wine every single night, that it actually increases your risk of cancer. And the reason why I bring that up is because it's funny how a lot of times that we, and I say we, all of us, rely on research and go with it on what they are saying. We have researched this out. Here is what we have found. But yet, it seems that every 5 or 10 years, then they always back up off of that and say, well, now it's causing problems. So, my point on that is, not only can it be that we can listen too much when we come to trying to protect or make an excuse on drinking alcohol, that, hey, it prevents cancer. It can prevent cancer. And yet we can hang on to that, but how foolish would we look 5 years down the road when they say, oh, we're sorry, that's no longer the case. Now, what argument are we going to use then? Because, see, when we typically come up with any kind of argument of our own, we are going to have to step outside of the Word, and we know that. But see, here's the deal. If we stick with what the Word says, and we will see, and I did not bring that with me, but if I had brought it with me, I have 74 different verses all printed out related to alcohol and their problems that are listed throughout the Bible. 74. Now, I'm not saying that's all of them, but that's all of them that I have printed out. So, if there's 74 different verses that say that alcohol is a problem and that it leads to destruction is its end result. If we see that, then we're going to have to step away from those 74 verses and be able to listen to somebody else that says, no, alcohol is okay. Go ahead and drink it. Go ahead and go down that road. But at the end, we will look foolish. That person at the end is going to look foolish. Yes, ma'am?
We're talking about the research and the study for that particular thing. We have some relatives that claim, using that research, that it was good to do it. But based on that research, I can't remember what the chemical compound is, but they said that same chemical compound is found in grape juice.
Yes.
And so we tried to explain to them, because we're talking about going outside the box.
Yep.
Because they wouldn't listen to the scripture. And so we had to look for ways to help them understand. And they still wouldn't,
Oh, yes.
understand. But it's interesting, like you said, how medical studies and research will change, over the years.
Absolutely.
If they would have listened, that same chemical substance to help them protect whatever it is that they were drinking, they could have just done it with the grape juice and been safe.
Yes. Well, I have a friend. He's a member of the church. And I don't remember if this was right around the same time or not, but he began to drink a glass of wine a night. And, of course, I think the glass got a little bit bigger as time went on. But he was relying on that, what I call an excuse, to justify drinking a glass a night. And I use that loosely because I'm assuming that's what he was doing. And we had gotten into discussion on the phone, and that's one thing that he went to. Well, they say that it's good to do that for different types of cancers to prevent them. And I had told him, I said, well, if you do the research, you will find the exact same thing in grape juice. So what is grape juice going to give you, or what is alcohol giving you that grape juice doesn't? And I said, there's only one thing, and that is some type of buzz. He goes, I don't even catch a buzz. It just helps relax me. I said, okay. We can use and try to define words, but, trust me on this. that's what you're using as an excuse. Okay, I never could get anywhere with him on it. Maybe he's not anymore. I don't know. This was probably roughly 3 years ago when I got into a discussion with him on it. And really could not get much further than that with him. So, hopefully, he's doing better. But outside of the health issues, does anybody else have any thoughts on the health issues? Yes, Adam? Sure. 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 Yeah, everything that we do in our lives, we have to do within moderation. We can easily affect our bodies and do it harm by overdoing anything. Of course, with alcohol, I say abstain completely. I don't think there is any moderation. I don't.
You talk about medicinally, though, what we're talking about. That's the argument that gets brought up to me as far as biblical justification for it is the fact that Timothy was told we could take some for his stomach.
Sure.
And like if it was sinful for him to do that, he wouldn't have been told he could do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my reaction to the person that told me this was, well, do you have a bellyache? Is that why you're taking it? And nowadays we have other things we can take. Why use that? And that was that's what they used then. But I'm like, you're not using it because your stomach hurts. You're
Right.
using it because, you're at the ball game or you're, having a burger. You think it goes well with these things and that's how you like the flavor. It has nothing to do with the stomach ache.
Sure.
So, but that's the argument that comes out, or that has come out when it talk about medicinal or, health, for health reasons.
Sure.
Also, another thing,
Mm-hmm.
when Paul told Timothy, they knew that he wasn't going to take a bottle of their wine and just chug it down. This was a medicinal purpose. We don't go to the store and we have a cough and chug a bottle of Dimetapp. We take the prescription prescribed. We take tablespoons.
Well,
You have to drink a ton of Dimetapp to get drunk.
yeah. Well, and two, the alcohol.
Their alcohol is like 3%.
Yeah.
Process back then was different.
Absolutely.
John Blackwell did a great job on the DVD about the process they went to make sure that it would not come in.
Yes. Well, and that's the difference. If you talk about today's alcohol content, you're looking at a glass of wine then and a glass of wine now. We're talking two totally different things here.
They watered it down.
And it was, yeah. And Timothy was having, when there was water issues going on, there was all kind of issues going on. And so that right there, like you said, though, if somebody wants to run there, that was a medical issue. This wasn't, I'm at the ball game, I'm having a burger, I'm stressed at work. That's not what we're talking about. So,
My other thought with that was, is it not logical to conclude that Timothy had cut it out of his diet because there had been it's okay to do it for this reason. Like like for us, it's okay to take some, NyQuil or Dimetap, something that has alcohol in it that helps with. It does have some medicinal purposes on a small scale, not the big wide scale. But of course, they didn't have those things then, but they had their remedies.
Yeah. It was almost as if he had to be told, because he wanted to steer clear from it. He didn't want no part of it. But that's when, he had to be told, hey, for this, he didn't say this, for this case, go get drunk. He said, take this, and for the stomach issues and the water issue and all that was going on at that point. So.
Also, a few months, maybe a couple of years back, we did a study of alcoholism, and he's one to 4 years of Bible, and that case was Timothy. The original Greek word is something like medicinal purposes and used derived from grapes.
Yeah. Illinois. Yeah. It's.
It wasn't wine, it's grape juice or syrup.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, it takes, when you go and do an in-depth study on it, and like you were talking about, Don, I hadn't seen it, but I'm sure he did a great job, because most all his videos are great. But outside of health issues, how many lives have been taken due to drinking and driving, or just drinking alone? How many lives has it either taken? How many lives has it affected? And with that, well, you know what? Let me keep on my note. Let me keep on this. How many divorces has been the result of alcohol? When we think about that, how many kids have a mother or a father or both that are in the house physically, but they're not in the house mentally? No one to be a leader. No one to make spiritual decisions. No one to be a good example. They will be an example, but I said a good example. You see, you can have an example in the house. You can have somebody there that's there in the house physically. They may not be there mentally. They may not be able to make rational decisions. They may not be able to help you in situations that you need help in, but they're there. And are they an example? Are they an example? Yes, they're an example. But are they a positive example? Are they a good example? And see, that's what we have to look at here when those who think that when they drink that it only affects themselves. Because see, a lot of times that's where the misunderstanding comes in, is you may have somebody that drinks, but they may think that that's only themselves. Hey, you don't worry about me. This is me, and it's affecting just me. But the problem is it affects way more than just them. It affects more than just themselves. And that's where they have to step out. They have to be able to look at that, and they eventually have to be able to own up to that. So, if all that's not enough, the research also showed that drinking alcohol can shorten a lifespan of up to almost 20 years. So, again, now we're back to, well, okay, it's my life though. It's my physical life. Maybe I don't want to be here for an extra 20 years. Okay. Well, what about your wife? Does she need you or want you here for the next or 20 extra years? Does your kids, are they going to need you? See, it comes back to a selfish problem. But that's what alcohol does. That's why I said that alcohol is a mocker. Alcohol is a deceiver. And ultimately, alcohol will bring destruction. It may be destruction on yourself, but what if it's not just yourself? Like I said, what if it's outside of not just drinking, but what if you decide to drink and get in a car and you wind up hitting somebody else? Now, all of a sudden, it's not you just involved. And it's not just the person that you hit and possibly killed that's involved, but their family. And then it just keeps going down the line and down the line and down the line. But see, the problem is that there's a lot of times that people don't want to see that. Either they who don't want to see it, they can't see it or they won't see it. So, alcohol, all in a nutshell, ultimately is a mocker. And that's exactly why I titled this lesson exactly what it is. Now, I understand that alcohol is not red-eyed, but when we look in the pages of the Bible, it talks about those who have red eyes from drinking too much and so on and so forth. It's a mocker. And it'll mock you, and ultimately it will destroy you. So like I said, if all that's not enough, if the health problems aren't enough, the problems that it can cause in the home, the problem that it can cause if you affect somebody else by hitting them and causing them to lose a loved one or their family to lose a loved one, if 20 years doesn't mean much to you, well, then there's bigger issues than just alcohol. Now, with all this weighing on our minds, how is the life of drinking portrayed by those who sell it? How is this portrayed? And I'm not talking about the store that you go into. I'm not talking about the person that's checking you out and taking your money. I'm talking about the breweries, those who brew it, those who are ultimately selling it. How do they see it? As fun? Are they going to let you know all the health problems that come along with alcohol? Sure, they have to put the warning on them, on the label. That's not by their choice. They had to give the warnings on the commercials. That's not by their choice. They didn't choose that. The government made them do that. They're not worried about you. They're not worried about your health. They're not worried about your family. They're not worried about anything that you neglect due to alcohol. They're not worried about any of it. They're worried about making those sales, making the money, fattening their pockets, and whatever it takes to do that is exactly what they're going to do. So now we see also that not only alcohol is a mocker, but it causes other people to be not only mockers, but liars, deceivers, and they will do whatever it takes to convince you that alcohol is fun, that alcohol will cause no problems until that end comes, whatever that end may be. And I'm not talking about the end as if your life comes to an end, but I'm talking about the end where you've hit bottom and there is no more to go. There is nowhere to go. So once you hit bottom, once you realize and you start looking up and you realize all that you've lost, guess what? Is that company going to be there for you to bail you out? No. They'll be there for you and let you know that you probably need to grab you another bottle and everything will be all right. That's what they're going to be there for you. So we see all the consequences, health, family, all the negative consequences that come with it. And so therefore we see that alcohol is a mocker. As we see from Proverbs 20 and verse 1, wine is a mocker. Strong drink is a brawler. And whoever is led astray by it is not wise. Now what's interesting about that verse is that it says that whoever is led astray by it. So to be led, you have to be able to start following, right? To be able to be led, you have to start somewhere. And that start somewhere is what? One drink. Is that one glass every night? The one drink, whatever it might be, whatever your excuse might be. And so it says that that's when it starts. And when it starts, then that's when you're going to be led astray by it. And those who are led astray are not wise.
When you say leading astray, it reminds me in James chapter 1, starting verse 13, talking about, well, that's in verse 12, give a little bit of context. It talks about blessed the man who endures temptation. In verse 13 it says, let no one say when he is tempted, I am tempted by God, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he himself tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. Then when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it's full grown, brings forth death. But that when each one is tempted and drawn away by his own desires, that's that leading into death.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And by their own desires, that's when they're drawn away. So, and when you have that, sure, you can have the temptation there. You can have the commercials. You can have all these things there. But ultimately, it's going to be your desire to be drawn away. Your desire to be tempted to the point to where you began to take those drinks and be led astray. Led away. Which ultimately brings forth death. And in verse 16, matter of fact, of James, it says, do not be deceived. Do not be deceived. And so when that temptation comes, when there are those, whether it's commercial, whether it's friends, whether it's whoever, when they bring those temptations to you, it says, don't be deceived. Don't be deceived as in somebody, what does that mean? Don't be deceived. Don't be led away. Don't get to the point to where you're going to give in because of your own desire and ultimately be led away. Do not be deceived. Did you find something?
Yeah. I feel so guilty about today anyway.
No, just, hey.
Going to Galatians chapter 5, we see some descriptions of the works of the flesh.
Okay.
There's adultery, there's fornication. I want to highlight uncleanness, and we'll read on lewdness, idolatry. Galatians chapter 5, verse 19. Lewdness, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousy. And keep on reading with verse 21. It puts envy, murders, drunkenness in those groups as well. So we see the specific consequences of being drunk there, but also too wanted to point out in the Old Testament in Leviticus in chapter 10 when God is giving instruction to Aaron and saying, it says, do not. I'm sorry. Leviticus chapter 10, verse 9, or verse 8 and 9. When God is giving instruction to Aaron, he says, do not be drunk with wine or intoxicating drink, you nor your sons with you, when you go. Sorry, I'll look over my slide.
Sorry.
When you go into the tabernacle meeting, lest you die, shall be statute forever throughout your generations, that you may distinguish between holy and unholy, between unclean and clean. So again, you kind of see a reference there between showing a direct correlation between drunkenness and being unclean, and then we also see that example again in the New Testament, where uncleanness is in the same category with drunkenness, which is into that. So I'm not trying to take too much out of context.
No.
That always leads me, when I always think about the old Levitical law, we are now priests, in the kingdom. And so when he tells them not to do these things, don't drink these things before you come into the tent of meeting.
Yeah.
Well, we are, our bodies are the temple of the Spirit. We are the priests now. And if he's telling them then, that was a foreshadow of who we're to be, if he expected that of him, why not of us?
Sure.
And we're always before, we're always in that presence because of our relationship, because of the connection that's made through our obedience to his will.
Yeah.
Being able to, I don't know.
Well, and again, I'm off my notes here, but so if I catch up and then I'm there again, we'll skip it. But another thing is, you get people that can get themselves in a situation, in other words, what I want to put in there is just fill in the blank. Because each and every one of us will have a problem. and so whatever that may be. So whether it's somebody that's drinking or somebody that is has a problem with homosexuality, whatever the case might be, they start to make excuses sometimes. Well, you know what? I can't help it. Okay? Yeah, it led me away, but now I'm to the point I can't do anything about it. It's got me. Some of them will even admit it's got me. Okay? And they say, but there's nothing I can do about it. Okay? Well, and on that top, and on that same thing, you think about, let me just go over here real fast. Homosexuals. They will say that they were born that way. They cannot help that they were born that way, and therefore they cannot help that that's the way that they are. That's the way I am. I can't help it. Okay, well, let's put them both in the same category then. Let's put adulterers. Let's put drunkards. Let's put homosexuality. Let's put them all in the same group here. Okay, because when we turn over to 1 Corinthians chapter 6, and we look at the wording here, it lists every single one of these. Those who covet, those who are fornicators, idolaters, adulterers, homosexuality, drunkards, all of these are listed, and he says these will, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, beginning in verse 9, around there is where it starts. So we notice this list of all these things that we were just discussing, and of course this isn't all the list, but we think of all these, and at the end it says, these will not inherit the kingdom of God. These are not going to inherit the kingdom of God. But when we get to verse 11, notice it says, such were some of you. Were. Okay? So those who claim that they were born homosexual, and there's nothing that they can do about it because that's the way that they were born, and therefore they don't have a choice. What about the drunkard who says, hey, it ran in my family? My dad, my grandpa, all of these were alcoholics. All of these were gamblers. All of these were such and such. And therefore, I inherited it and I can't help it. And therefore, I'm powerless over it. I can't do anything about it.
That's just the power of influence.
Power of influence.
Genetics.
Sure. And so, but these right here, they had the same issues going on here. And what did Paul say? Paul wrote to them and said, such as you were. So they were these things, and now they're not these things.
You know, there is study that's been done that shows that some people do have their physiological makeup when they drink, they actually become addicted with the first drink.
Sure.
And it is harder for them to quit, but it's not impossible.
That's
If
right.
it were impossible, then we'd have no freedom of choice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have a choice.
Yeah, you do have a choice.
Just like with the homosexuals, you know, there's a doctor down in Australia that took identical twins. And if they're identical, that means they have the exact same genetic makeup. One's gay, one's not.
Yeah.
So therefore, it can't be genetic.
Right.
It's the choice. You make a choice. And there are many who have had that tendency who left it. So you can't say, you know, I used to smoke, and it's hard to quit. But you can't. Now, when I hear people say, "Oh, it's just, you know, you can't just quit. You got to wean off of it. You got to this," I'm like, no, you got to throw it away.
Yeah.
You got to get it out.
Yeah.
Because it's hard, but it's getting over what's hard that makes you not go back.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like going
Absolutely.
through that trial, that struggle to get it behind you. That you don't want to do that again.
Right.
You don't want to have to go through that again.
Right.
So.
And I don't want to take this out of context here, but here's just a thought. Without doing any kind of research, here's just a thought. It's not, I don't want you to read into this. But if he's considering drunkards here, and the Bible talks about those who have drank much wine, being red-eyed and this kind of thing, and the alcohol content of wine back then was nowhere near what we have now. Think about how much it would have taken to drink to be able to actually become intoxicated. So we weren't talking about people here that were just occasionally doing these kind of things. We were talking about those when he says drunkard, he's talking about these that would drink most of the day, so by the evening they would probably be intoxicated. Now, don't set that in stone, but that's just a thought that I've had while we were talking about that. And he's talking about these who are drunkards. Yes.
The research I've done, alcohol back then was about 2-3%.
Okay.
Alcohol now, they're bragging about, they made it 17.5 wine.
Okay.
So you think about the difference between 3%
And 17.
17.5.
Yep.
That's a huge difference.
It is.
And another thing, a couple of years ago, beer hit a 5% or 3% actually.
Mhm.
Earlier this year, it's gone to 6%.
Yep.
And people are thinking it's great, and we've got more. Well, how long is it going to be before we're 12%?
Yep.
Or 13%? You know, it's people are never going to be satisfied with the alcohol content.
Well, they'll never become satisfied because the more that they drink, the more that they have to drink. And so what typically happens is, I know that I don't want to sound like I'm contradicting myself, but this is just my opinion. Beer sales will actually begin to lessen because they'll start drinking whiskey because the beer's not doing enough. And so therefore they lose beer sales. So if they can up the volume in alcohol in the beer, then their beer sales stay the same or go up. You see? So
One more thing, I've never heard this point out before, but think about the amount of money they spend. You know, if you're ever at a grocery store that sells alcohol, look at the price of
Oh,
alcohol
yeah.
compared to the average grocery.
yeah.
People waste so much money on an item that does them no benefit whatsoever.
I agree.
You spend $15, $30 and you got 6 bottles.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and that's the thing. And that's the whole point. Not only is it not beneficial to them, but it's not beneficial to really anybody. Well, except for fattening the pockets of the distributor. That's it.
And I think it's somewhere in Ecclesiastes, just kind of paraphrasing a little bit, that's some of the things that Solomon talked about, the vanities under the sun, where, with alcoholism or any other type of addiction, you want more and more and more.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Solomon's talking about, the more you get, the more you want, and you're never satisfied with those things.
That's it. You're never, that's the thing. You're never content with anything.
Right there within Christianity, we are to be content.
We are to be
With what
content.
we have.
We are to be content, yeah.
They don't go together.
And how is that trusting in God? I think we were talking about that Sunday in Bible class. I think on trusting God or trusting Christ or something. Oh yeah, and following Christ. We took trust. That's what we were talking about. Where's that trust at? Well, your trust is either in one thing or the other. Alcohol, bottle, Christ. Which is it? Or you can actually just fill in the blank with whatever. Because you can put your trust in money, alcohol. Yes.
A couple of things that you mentioned that I agree with you on, but I disagree with the world's view. Going back to those that say that they can't control their urges for alcohol, or they can't help the fact that a man use a man to attract the homosexual thing. Well, I see that Paul. I think Paul mentioned somewhere where he's got to put himself into his body into subjection.
Yes.
And all of us as Christians have to be able to put our minds and bodies into subjection, so that we're not allowing the lust of the flesh or the pride of life get us and keep us from going into heaven. But also he mentioned in Philippians about Christ in Philippians chapter 1 verses 20 about Christ being magnified in his body. And in verse 21, he says that for me to live as Christ and to die is gain. So he had to realize that he had to think past a physical mindset and realize that it's all about Christ and those things that will glorify him. And then the second part, that when people say that, well, I can't help that I like the same sex. To several degrees, that's a blasphemous statement, because God created us in his image, and God he cannot, like I was reading before, I think in James, where we can't say that we're tempted by God. If you're saying that you're born this way, that you're saying that God created you to directly sin. No, that's a choice again. Because God cannot lie. It's impossible for God to lie. And for someone to say that, and especially if they are a quote unquote Christian, by that confession, they're giving a blasphemous statement, because it goes against just the order of creation, which we are created in the image of God, and children are a gift from God. So I kind of dug into that pretty deep.
Yeah, no, it's yeah.
It's a pretty horrific statement to make.
Sure it is. I mean, you're born innocent. You're taking the innocence of a baby, first of all, and second of all, you're saying that God basically had them born in sin, and that's going into.
Knit them together that way.
Huh?
Like, we're told that he knits us together
Yeah.
in the mother's womb. So if he knit them together that way, then he created something.
That evil or sinful, or both, I guess. But
Sin's always a choice.
it's always a choice. It's always a choice, and it always comes back to, as we saw there in James, it's your desire. It's ultimately what you desire, because you're going to desire to follow Christ. You're going to desire to do what's best for not only yourself, but for your family, or you're going to desire to do whatever you want to do. And the only way you can do that is to not be a follower of Christ and ultimately be selfish. Ultimately be selfish, because, and that's why I appreciate the words of James, own desire. Because everything goes back to what we want, what we desire.
It's like when Eve was, sorry,
Oh.
Eve was, she was drawn away by, Satan, all he did was tempt. He can't force his hand on anybody either. He just tempts. But Eve was still drawn away from her own desire of that knowledge. She saw that the fruit was good to eat and good to the eye, or good to make one wise.
Sure.
So her own desire further convinced
Yep.
her
To have that knowledge, to be wise.
Of course, if we're in that situation, 1 Corinthians 10:13, he will provide a way of escape.
Yes.
Now, he never said that way would be pleasurable.
That's it.
He never said, oh, it's going to be easy and it's going to be an easy out. But he did promise us that he would provide a way of escape. And so we always have to keep that in mind when we are tempted.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But then I just think
Oh,
along
okay.
our line, James 4:7 says, there's twofold promise there. If we submit to God, we have to resist Satan. He'll bless us and take care of us if we just,
Trust. Trust, follow.
In Ephesians 5, verse 8, where you were once in darkness, but now you are light in the Lord, walk as children of light.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't tell us to walk in something you couldn't walk in. He goes on and continues in verse 18. Do not be drunk with wine in which dissipation is filled with the Spirit. So we see kind of a contrast there. You either do this or you do that.
That's it.
So,
You do one or the other. Matthew 6, you can't serve one. So, but I think I'm out of time, but I didn't get to a lot of the scriptures, but because that was kind of just my introduction but on that. But I appreciate it. Like I said, I wasn't anticipating on teaching class, but I appreciate